I'm posting my weekly budget update a couple days late this week. I'm going to tell you a little bit about where I've been, and I'm also going to cover all the shenanigans that went on in my budget this week. Are you ready? Let's go. Welcome back to Ready, Budget, Go. My name is Drew, and on this channel we talk about household budgeting, saving money, and achieving our financial goals. So if any of those sound like something that you vibe with, please consider subscribing, hit the like button, and leave me a comment down below, because I'd love to hear from you. I'm doing the budget update this week, and I've got a lot to cover and a lot of changes in how I'm doing things. And things might be changing again in the near future, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, let's start with a cash dump like we usually do. So I'm going to set my binder aside here, and I'll take all of these out. Okay, so one of the things that I did last week is I went in and cashed in all the coins, and I had the slip here somewhere, but it has escaped. So it was 40 some odd dollars. So I cashed that in. Amazon was not available as one of the options, so I cashed it in for a DoorDash gift card and just used that for my weekly DoorDashes. So my expenses are a little bit artificially low. Now that money is supposed to go to gifts. However, with how I'm doing things differently and the lifestyle changes that have happened, I am seeding more into the gift fund each week, so I don't feel too bad about 40 some odd dollars being used for essentially personal expenses. And I'll talk more about that gift fund coming up in a little bit. But first, let's talk about the rest of the cash. So I don't need this week. It's empty, and I have nothing to put in it. And the reason I have nothing to put in it is because I was out of town this week, and so I didn't spend any cash. So I am going to take the full $50, which is in here, and I am going to put it, 20, 45, 50. Yep, I'm going to put it straight into this pouch. And at the end of the month, I will stuff whatever's left or whatever accumulates into the gift fund. So I'm skipping this step for this week because I didn't spend any money, so I didn't get any change, so that wouldn't go in here. I am going to seed next week's with $45. Now, why $45 and not $50? The reason is because I actually borrowed $5 from last week's cash to tip housekeeping because I was out of town. So I am only putting in $45 for this week so that I could put in $50 for last week, if that makes sense. So this is going to go in here, and this will be for this week. If you're new, my budgeting weeks run from Friday through Thursday. So this is for the 12th through the 18th. And I checked out of my hotel today as I'm recording this, which is the 13th, so the $5 needs to come out of this week. Ultimately, it's kind of a wash, but I like to keep the weeks straight. So that is all that I have in here for now. I do have $200 more here, actually, that I am going to pull out because this is going into the gift fund. And I will talk more about that when we get to the cash flow. So this is going to go right back into this pouch. I'm not going to put it in now because I just want everything to go in all at once. But I did start that envelope if you watched a previous video where I did that. So it is ready to go. All right, so all of this is going to go to the side, and then I'll bring out the budget book and we'll talk about what happened this week. As I said in the intro, there were some shenanigans, and I'm also making some changes to how I look at my expenses. So I've already pre-filled everything, and I will just go over what all happened. Excuse me. So everything that I pre-filled for this week, I color-coded already. And I'm going to start doing this going forward for as long as I do paper budgeting, because I think it helps with knowing exactly what week everything goes into and what's new and what's not, so that you don't have to sit here and watch me fill in everything by hand each week. So first thing that happened is paycheck one came in. That was exactly as expected, $2,997. So we're all good there. And then in the bills section, Quantum came out. That is my fiber internet. That was $75. This used to be $80. And I was putting it on a credit card, and that credit card was supposed to earn rewards, but I discovered that they were not counting it as the 5% cashback category. So I had it come out of my checking account instead. Now, 5% of $80 is only $4. You get a $5 discount for paying through a checking account. That extra dollar to me was worth not giving them my checking account number. But for $5, I'll give them the checking account. Okay, so next is YouTube Premium. That came out as expected, $16. Affirm, this is on the 21st, but I already know I'm not going to make this payment because I paid it off. So it's gone, and I won't have that regular bill anymore. So I wrote in a 0, and I just recorded it for this week because this payment came through this week. Nebula came out, $34 as expected. And Netflix, I forgot to cancel, so I have the pleasure of paying $20 for another month of Netflix, even though I don't particularly want it. I paid for it, so I'll use it, and I'm going to cancel it. All right, so I will come back and talk about these three little things here, the LabCorp, the doctor bill, and the ultrasound, because that was not a pleasant surprise this week. But for now, let's move on, and we'll talk about wallet spending. I spent $184.95. This is artificially low for two reasons. Number one, I didn't really buy many groceries this week because I knew I was going to be out of town. Number two, because I had the DoorDash gift card from cashing in all my coins. So I underspent this week. I did, when I was in Portland for FinCon, most of those expenses for food and whatnot, that all went on the business credit card, and I don't track that here. That goes to Ready Budget Go, and I don't share those numbers right now. I'm working on getting toward that, but it's probably going to be a next year thing. So look for that potentially in 2026. But for now, $184.95 in personal spending. That does include $50 in cash, and I'll talk about that in more detail when I get to that sheet. For savings, $398. This was from finishing the life of a creator and the Cairo sheet in the Paint by Sticker book. So $398 went into my stockpile this week for the big move. And then savings and extra debt. Again, Affirm got paid off $257. So that is it for that. So now let's talk about cash flow. Excuse me. So I had two transactions come in for deposits. One was $440. That was the Letterbox deposit. And the other one that I had was Paycheck One, $2,997.47. So again, because this is more or less a check register, if you haven't seen this already, all of this is to the penny. In the budget sheet, I more or less round most of those. Okay, so then on the withdrawals, I took out $400 from the ATM. $200 of that is for my monthly spending, $50 a week, 4 weeks in September, $200. The other $200 was essentially what's left from Letterbox for the gift fund. Now, the reason why it's not the full $440 is because I spent $240 on a gift this month. I don't count that in the budget because that's coming out of an envelope. It's not coming out of my weekly spending. So in the future, that will just be envelope spending. And if I spend more than what's in the envelope, I'm going to have to pull that from somewhere else in the budget, and that will be reflected here. But if I'm just spending out of a cash envelope, I'm not tracking it here. I'm tracking it on the envelope tracker. Hopefully that makes more sense, or makes sense. If not, I think it will as things go on and I transition into doing things that way. Quantum Fiber, as I said earlier, came out, $75. Affirm, which was paid off completely, $256.21. That is my cell phone hardware. And my company gives me a stipend of $100 a month that is meant to cover the hardware and the service. So I now have this phone paid off. I could get another one, but I think I'm going to keep this for a little while, let that stipend kind of build up. I mean, I will get the $100 every month, but you know, I don't know that I necessarily want to go out and spend the money on a new phone right now. So I'm just going to let the difference between what I'm paying for cell service and what they give me build up so that if I do decide to get another phone in the future, I can just pay cash for it and not have to finance it at all, even though this was at 0%, and that's the only reason I financed it. All right, then transfer to Wealthfront for the big move, $398. That was the stockpile that I talked about on the previous sheet. And then I had a couple of credit card payments, one for about $70 and one for about $450. So that was everything in the checking account. Now let's talk about expenses. So one other thing that came up this week that I wasn't necessarily planning on is that I spent that $70, so credit card payment, I already paid it. That $70 was spent at Amazon, and that was to replace all of my towels. And the reason is because I saw an article somewhere that said you're supposed to replace your bath towels, washcloths, hand towels every year. And I thought, well, I had the current set of towels that I have 3 moves ago, so I should probably replace them all. So I did. I found a deal on Amazon for some that I liked, so I bought those. They were delivered, I've washed them, and now I'm using them. And then other transactions, so there were a couple here for DoorDash. Some of these are subsidized by the gift card. Safeway, $4 and change for food. Another DoorDash, McDonald's for a couple bucks. And then Eastburn PDX, so that's a restaurant in Portland where I went with a cousin of mine and his girlfriend. And I actually didn't finish filling this out. So this is going to be weekly cash. And that doesn't get a category, and that's $50. So I need to add all of this up. Oh, and I've just used the wrong pen to do that. Well, that's okay. I try to remember to use this Sarasa Mark-On pen because that won't smudge with the mild liner highlighters, which I like to use. But now this is almost certainly going to smear. Smear, yep. Okay, that's okay though. All right, so I probably need to go back and change that total. So let me do that real quick. 7068, 1144, 407, 2327, 279, 7270, and 50. Yep, 234.95. So I wasn't nearly as under as I thought I was. Thanks to buying towels and taking my cousins out for dinner. That was a FinCon night, but because there were 2 other people there and it was not work related, that is going as a personal expense, not a business expense. I always want to make sure that I stay on the up and up with that. So I'm going to clear this here. And we're going to write in the real total, and this time we're going to use the right pen, of $234.95. Okay, and we'll highlight that in blue. And that did smear a little, but that was on correction tape, not on paper. All right, but it's corrected now. So that is it for the spending. I think that's the end of what I wanted to share there. Yep. So let's talk about savings real quick. Or actually, before we move on to savings, let me just talk about these 3 things here. So I had some medical procedures last month, or tests really, not so much procedures. And I had a doctor visit, I had some blood work done, and I had 2 ultrasounds essentially. I had an echocardio and I had a renal ultrasound. And so I figured that those 2 ultrasounds together were going to cost me around $300. Oh, how naive I was. I'm going to give you the actual figures that were billed to my insurance and what my out-of-pocket responsibility is. Now, before I do that, I just want to preface it with, I'm on a high deductible plan. So the way that works, if you haven't done a high deductible plan before with your medical insurance, is if you use the insurance, if you go to the doctor, they will bill the insurance their regular amount. The insurance will come back and say, this is what your contracted amount is. So there's a discount for, if they're an in-network provider. And so this is what, our agreed amount is, and this is how much we're going to pay. And then they send you the explanation of benefits based on that. The insurance company does. So I haven't gotten all of these bills yet. I do have the LabCorp bill, but I don't have the other bills yet. I only have the EOBs from the insurance company. Okay, let me switch over to a different page just so it's not too many extraneous numbers, because I did write everything down here. Take a deep breath. All right, so here are the actual numbers. Now this is what I am supposed to pay, and this is what was billed to insurance. This is what you would pay if you did not have insurance at all. So LabCorp, which was the blood draw, including the draw itself and all of the tests they did, I'm paying $81.76. The MSRP, the sticker price, is almost $500, so insurance saved me a ton here. The doctor visit, $348. List price, I'm paying 302 pennies. The echocardiogram, $887 without insurance. I'm paying $574. The renal ultrasound, $900 or $903 without insurance. I'm paying $631.70. So all in, the total value of all of the tests and doctor visits and everything that I had was $2,600. Well, $2,629 and 35 cents. I'm paying $1,587.46, so I'm saving about $1,050. It's still a lot of money. I had budgeted $1,000 all in for this, and so I'm going to have to come up with that extra $600 somehow. But thank goodness for the insurance. And had I known that all of this was going to happen, I would have selected the PPO option this year. That is the typical 80-20 deductible thing. But as it is, I am getting really close to meeting my deductible. And on this plan, I think once you hit your deductible, the plan kicks in at like 90%. They pay 90% and you pay 10% out of pocket. So I'm going to be going to every doctor I can. I'm going to the dermatologist. I'm going to see my primary care. I'm going back to cardiology. I'm going for the whole works. And one other thing, just before I move off of this, is that for these studies, for the two ultrasounds, I didn't have to pay a radiologist to read the sonograms because my doctor, the cardiologist, is qualified to interpret those studies. So had he not been, then I would have had another bill from the radiologist who would have to interpret the sonograms and give that to the doctor. So I'm grateful for that, but still, this is significantly more than what I was expecting. So let's go back to the budget and let's talk about how I'm going to pay for that. I did have a carryover from August of $1,100. I had kind of already started spending that over here in the stockpiles, sticking extra money toward my goals. Also, there were some other things over here that came in that I wasn't necessarily expecting. So like this Netflix bill for $20, I did have another prescription. I think I filled that last month. But I might have more this month. I mean, who knows? So I'm going to assume that everything's going to wash when I do this. If not, I will pull it from the BLIP fund. So that is a perfect segue into talking about savings, because let's talk about the BLIP fund, because I haven't talked about it in a while. So the BLIP fund, BLIP stands for Break Lock If Prompted. So I already fully funded this with $2,400 in it. I ended up taking $400 out of it and just keeping $2,000 in because I thought, well, $2,000 is kind of my threshold for what I feel comfortable with without declaring an emergency. Not so much $2,400. Excuse me. So I took that $400 and I put it toward the business, and I have $2,000 in there now. If I need more than $2,000, that's when the emergency fund kicks in. And the emergency fund, I fully funded this last year, or maybe it was this year. No, it was this year. I fully funded the emergency fund this year, but it was back in April. So that one has $12,000 some odd dollars in it. And that is based on all of the work I did determining how much I would need to cover an emergency. Now, I really should go through this again because the picture has changed. I might need even more money in the emergency fund. I might need less. But for now, because I'm working on a liquid savings goal, which is the big move, If I have an emergency between now and then that wipes this out, then I will take money from the big move. So I'm not as worried about this yet. Okay, so that is it for the emergency savings. Let's talk about the fund savings. Let's talk about the big move. And specifically, let's talk about the subscriber count challenge that I'm working on. So this last week, I crossed the threshold of 590 subscribers. So thank you to all of you who have subscribed. And if you haven't yet, I would love to have you. The subscribe button's right down below, and I save $5 if you hit it. So every 10 subscribers, I save $50. So when we get to one that ends in 0, I color in another bubble and send $50 into that fund. This $50 comes from interest, typically, in my emergency fund. And if I don't have enough in the emergency fund to do that without, hurting the emergency fund, then I take it from my earnings from my Etsy shop. Link for the Etsy shop is also down in the description, and you can get these for yourself if you like. The other thing that I'm doing to save for the big move is the books. Let me just fold this over here. So every week I track how much I am putting toward the big move from the Savings Challenge books that I do on Wednesday. This also includes game night from Monday, but I just call it books for the sake of simplicity with the fund and to distinguish it from the money that comes in from subscriptions or from subscribers. And it's not so much that, people who subscribe give me money. It's that I save that money into that fund when someone subscribes. Hopefully that makes sense. So right now, as of this week, when I put in the $398 that I covered earlier, I'm at $1,447. So $1,447 here plus $2,950. Oops. Oh, shoot. So far, I'm at almost $4,400 out of a $15,000 goal. I might need to adjust that goal, but if so, I'll do that for 2026 because I know I'm not going to complete this goal before 2026 unless I get the lottery, which I don't even play. But for the purposes of this year, I'm just working toward that 15,000. I say I might change it because I might need more money just based on how things are going, inflation and moving costs and all of that. So we'll see how that goes. But for now, for this week, that is all that I have to share. I will be sharing more about FinCon in a separate video. I need a few days to kind of digest the conference and give some of my highlights of it, talk about what I've learned. So that video will be coming at some point. It is going to be a long form video. I probably won't do video content. It will probably just be my voice. So you can listen to it kind of as a podcast if you like, but I'm only going to publish it here to YouTube. So I hope to have that video up by next weekend. In the meantime, if you have any questions about FinCon, drop them down in the comments. I will be glad to share anything that I can. But like I say, I'll have a bigger video explaining all of that next week. So for now, thank you so much for watching. Coming up on Monday, I've got game night. Wednesday, we're back in the Savings Challenge books. And then I'll be right back here next Friday with another weekly budget update and hopefully less crazy than it was this week. So until I do see you in the next one, make sure that you subscribed, hit the like button if you enjoyed it, and take care.